අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
On First at 9, this Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023. Change of heart. Opposition MP Harsha De Silva appointed chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Finance following proposal by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The worst is over. Sri Lankan Airlines forecasts a profit of $50 million next year, says CEO of national carrier.
But if you look where we are now, tourism is now back where it was the first quarter of last year is coming back. Day in, day out, we're promoting the country. I've worked for 8 airlines. I don't think I've ever worked for an airline that probably spends so much time promoting the country rather than the airline itself.
Surge in dengue cases. Sri Lanka grapples with sharp rise in dengue cases. Public warned to be watchful. Drivers of growth. Opposition leader calls for the implementation of an active program to protect SMEs. Industries Minister says national industry policy to be tabled in Parliament soon.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuwata. From Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on your English news service on AdaDerana 24. And we take a look at your top local stories tonight. Tensions rose high today as the Inter-University Students' Federation took to the streets staging a demonstration against the government, citing several demands including the revoking of suspensions imposed on several student activists and the repealing of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. In response, police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds.
The Inter-University Students' Federation today staged a large-scale demonstration in Colombo, citing several demands from the government. Revoking of the suspensions imposed on several student activists, calling for an increase in the Mahapola student allowance, reduction in the cost of living, and the repealing of the Prevention of Terrorism Act were among the demands of the protesters. Earlier today, however, the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court issued a restraining order against 13 individuals, including IUSF convener Madhushan Chandrajit, barring them from holding protests that would inconvenience the pedestrians and vehicular movement. The court order further prohibited the protesters from entering the President's office, the President's house, the Finance Ministry, and the Goldface Green areas. The Inter-University Students' Federation commenced the protest march near the University of Sri Jayawardenepura around 3 p.m. However, the police had already cordoned off Sorata Road, the stretch of road beginning at the Vijayarama Junction leading towards the university. The police then fired water cannons and tear gas to disperse the group. A heated situation arose between the riot police and protesters when steps were taken to avert the group's march towards the university.
Samagi Jana Balawege parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva was nominated and appointed the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance. The Committee of Selection of the Parliament has decided to nominate him as the chairman of the 4th session of the 9th Parliament. The opposition parliamentarians said his name was nominated by President Ranil Wickremesinghe, and it was unanimously approved by all members.
A meeting between the ruling party and opposition MPs were held in Parliament this morning under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. During the meeting, the President proposed the appointment of MP Harsha De Silva as the chairman of the Parliament's Committee of Public Finance.
දැන් පාර්ලිමේන්තුව IMF ගිවිසුම සම්මත කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒකසේ පත් වෙන සභාපතිතුමා ඒ අනුව වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. දැන් මෙතන ප්‍රශ්නයක් උනේ විපක්ෂයේ බොහෝ දෙනෙක් එකට විරුද්ධ වුණෙත් නැහැ, කැමති වුණෙත් නැහැ. විශේෂයෙන්ම ඡන්දෙ නොදී හිටියා. කොහොමද මේක ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවද? ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්න තියෙන්නේ IMF ගිවිසුම අනුකූලව. නැත්නම් අපිට වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්න බෑ. ඒ නිසා මම කලමැතුමා ආචාර්යතුමාට කතා කරා. එතුමා කිව්වා එතුමා ඒ අනුව ක්‍රියා කරන්නම් කියලා. කොහොමද ප්‍රසිද්ධිය කියලා තිබුණා මේක හොඳයි කියලා. එතන ඡන්දෙ නොදුන්නාට ඒක වෙලේ හිතුවා. මම නම් කියන්නේ අපි එතුමාට ඒ වැඩ කටයුත්ත බාර දෙමු කියලා ඉදිරියට ගෙනියනවා. බජට් හවුස් එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා අගමැතිතුමාගේ කොට අපිට පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කතාව මම හිතන්නේ අපි පටන් ගන්න ඉතින් කලින් කතාව කරා. ඉතින් ඒකට අපේ ශිල්පියක සහයෝගය තියෙනවා කළ යුතුමයි.
Also making top local news, Sri Lanka is currently grappling with a concerning spike in dengue fever cases, with the total number of infections reported so far this year currently up to 4,581. This has led to the National Dengue Control Unit declaring 67 MOH areas in the country as highly vulnerable. As such, health officials have expressed deep concern over the rapidly increasing numbers and called for collective preventive measures to control the outbreak.
In recent weeks, Sri Lanka has witnessed a surge in dengue cases, with the monsoon season further exacerbating the situation. Accordingly, the National Dengue Control Unit raised the number of highly vulnerable MOH areas across the country to 67. Padukka, Kahatuduwa, Vaduwa, Pujapitiya, Valasmulla, Suryawawa, Okavela, Akurasa, Mulatiyana, Mulativ, Muthur, Pannala, Kuruvita, Rambukkana, Varakapala, Yatiyantota and Bulat Kahupetiya MOH areas were freshly identified as highly vulnerable areas. According to the unit, 2,396 suspected dengue cases were recorded during the week that ended on the 4th of June, with a 4.7% increase of cases when compared to the week prior. 50.9% of the total number of dengue cases were reported from the Western Province, translating to 507 infected persons. Further, a substantial number of cases were reported from 10 districts including Hambantota, Matara, Jaffna, Trincomalee, Kurunegala, Ratnapura and Kegol when compared to last week. As such, the number of total dengue-related cases recorded so far this year has increased to 41,581 cases, with 49.7% of the infections recorded from Western Province, while 9.8% and 7.2% of the cases were recorded from Northwestern and Central Provinces respectively. Health officials expressed deep concern over the rapidly increasing number of dengue cases and called for enhanced preventive measures, public awareness campaigns and mosquito control programs.
ක්‍රමයෙන් අපි දකිනවා සතිපතා මේ ඩෙන්ගු රෝගීන්ගේ වැඩිවීමක් ඉදිරියේදී මේ මෝසම් වර්ෂාව පටන් ගත්තාම රෝගීන්ගේ ඉහළ යාම ඉතා වේගෙන් සිදු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් මේ අනුව අපි ඉතා දැඩි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්න ඕනේ රෝග වාහක මර්ධනය කිරීම සඳහා අපේ හැම අංශම එකතු වෙලා. හොයාගෙන තියෙන කාරණයක් තමයි මේ දූමායනය ඵලදායී නොවන බව මේ වගේ ලොකු ප්‍රදේශවල දූමායන කටයුතු සිදු කිරීම. දූමායනය නිර්දේශ කරන්නේ කියන්නේ පරිසරයෙන් ඇතුළත විශේෂයෙන්ම ගොඩනැගිලි ඇතුළත. මොකද මේ මදුරන් විවේක ගන්නේ තිර රෙදි ඒ වගේම ලීබඩු වගේ දේවල් පෘෂ්ඨ අවට. දැන් පහුගිය දවස්වල කරපු පරීක්ෂණ කීපයකින්ම හොයාගෙන තිබුණා සමහර රසායනික වලට මේ මදුරන් ප්‍රතිරෝධී දක්වනවා. මොකද මේ මදුරන් මියන ප්‍රමාණය 90%කට වඩා අඩු තත්ත්වයක් සමහර තැන්වල තිබුණා. ඒතකොට ඒගොල්ලන් ඒවට ප්‍රතිරෝධීතාවය නිසා මේවේ ඵලදායීතාවය අඩු වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා මේවා අපි අනිසි ලෙස භාවිතේ පුළුවන් තරම් අගරිනවා.
In Parliament today, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa urged government to implement a swift action plan to protect the small and medium-scale enterprises that were affected by the economic crisis. Meanwhile, Minister of Industries Dr. Ramesh Patirana said the National Industries Policy will be presented to Parliament soon following Cabinet approval. In the meantime, parliamentarian of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Dr. Harsha De Silva, said Parliament has the responsibility of introducing new laws and amending existing laws in order to provide an opportunity for the small and medium-scale business owners to get their debt restructured.
අපි චීනට ගිහිල්ලා ඉන්දියාවට ගිහිල්ලා කියනවා අනේ අපේ ණය ටික ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරලා දෙන්න අපිට ගෙවන්න හැකියාවක් නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ දේශීය ණය හිමියන්ට ගිහිල්ලා කියනවා අපි දේශීය ණය ටික ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරලා දෙන්න. දේශපාලනඥයන් නිසා විනාශයට පත් කරපු කුඩා හා මධ්‍යම පරිමාණයේ කර්මාන්තකරුවන්ට කිසිම නීතිමය හැකියාවක් නැහැ. ඔවුන්ගේ ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරගන්න කියලා බැංකුවෙන් ඉල්ලීමක් කරන්න. ඒක අසාධාරණයි ගරු ඇමතිතුමනි. ඒක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අසාධාරණ. රට වැටිච්ච නිසා තමයි ඔවුන් වැටුනේ. රට වැටුනේ දේශපාලන හේතුන් මත. එතකොට ඔවුන් ඒකට දුක් විඳින්න ඕනේද? අපිට සාධාරණ වගකීමක් නැද්ද? අලුත් නීති ගෙනල්ලා, තීර නීති සංශෝධනය කළා. ඔවුන්ගේ ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කරන්න උන්ට අවස්ථාවක් ලබා දෙන්න.
මේ කුඩා හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණයේ කර්මාන්ත ශාස්ත්‍රයේ ඩිමාන්ඩ් චේන් එක තුලත් සැපයුම් දාමය තුලත් රටක අති වැදගත් වූ ආර්ථික වර්ධන යාන්ත්‍රණයක්. මේ යාන්ත්‍රණය අපි ශක්තිමත් කළ යුතුයි. එවද කුඩා හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණයේ කර්මාන්ත හරහා අපිට පුළුවන් සාධාරණ ආදායම් ව්‍යාප්තියක් සමාජයේ ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න. ලෝකයේ ease of doing business rankings දිහා බැලුවම අපේ රටට තියෙන 2019 වසරේ 99 වෙනි රෑන්ක් එක. ඒ නිසා අපි අලුත් විදිහට හිතලා කුඩා හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණයේ කර්මාන්ත ශාස්ත්‍රයේ මේ රටේ ආර්ථික එන්ජිම ආර්ථික වර්ධනයේ ප්‍රධානතම පෙරමඟ ගමන්කරු රැක ගන්නට රජය අනුගමනය කරන මේ උදාසීන වැඩපිළිවෙල වෙනුවට වඩාත් සක්‍රිය වඩාත් ශක්තිමත් වඩාත් කේන්ද්‍රගත වූ වැඩසටහනක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම යෝග්‍යයි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේදී ප්‍රකාශ කරමින්
unless we have a ring fencing mechanism in this country we can't protect the SME sector and some of the industrialists. ඒක ඉතා පැහැදිලි. මේ රටේ නීතිපත්‍ය හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ කර්මාන්ත නිෂේධනය කරන්න නිසා කර්මාන්ත ප්‍රවර්ධනය කරන්න වෙන නිසා ඒක ආමන්ත්‍රණය කරන ගැටලු ගණනාවක් තිබෙනවා. ඒ ගැටලු සමහරක් ඒවා අපි කැමති සෑම කෙනෙක්ම එකතු වෙලා අපි දේශපාලන පක්ෂ හැබැයි මේ රටේ කර්මාන්ත දියුණු කරන්න අවශ්‍ය සෑම එකතු වෙලා කටයුතු කරන්නත් අවශ්‍යයි. ඉදිරියේදී අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. අපි ජාතික කර්මාන්ත ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හදලා දැන් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට අනුමැතිය ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩල අනුමැතිය ලැබුණාට පස්සේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා. පක්ෂ විපක්ෂ සෑම කෙනෙකුටම ජාතික කර්මාන්ත ප්‍රතිපත්තිය අදහස් දක්වන්න පුළුවන්.
Amongst the many issues faced by the SMEs, access to finance has remained one of the key areas of concerns in the SME sector in the past. It continues to remain a concern. Inconsistent with His Excellency the President's economic vision outlined in the budget 2023, where transformation to blue and green economy has been identified as one of the key growth strategies. I am happy to inform this august House that the Ministry of Environment has already done much of the work to introduce numerous climate finance instruments such as green bonds, blue bonds, etc. We are currently working with the support of international development agencies to create necessary environment for the introduction of swaps such as nature swaps, climate swaps, etc. These nature-based financing options will also enhance the overall access to credit by the Sri Lankan industries and the SME sector. The other key areas of challenge faced by the SME sector is the access to market. In order to improve global market access and once again going on His Excellency the President's economic vision of creating export-oriented growth, we should facilitate and set targets of at least 20% increase in exports from SMEs over the period of 3 years. Speaking about the mineral and mining sector, which comes under the purview of my ministry, I am happy to inform this House that as part of developing market access for Sri Lankan minerals and mineral-based products, we are in the process of attracting internationally renowned mineral industries to enter Sri Lankan market and enhance value addition and diversify mineral exports, thereby to claim at least a fragment of global mineral market initially and to transform the Sri Lankan mineral industry to be next billion-dollar industry in Sri Lanka.
The National Institute of Infectious Diseases confirmed today that 2 patients who contracted the monkeypox virus are currently being treated at the institute. Medical experts have since advised the public to seek medical attention if they experience symptoms such as rashes, blisters or any other symptoms related to monkeypox.
It was reported that a woman and her daughter tested positive for monkeypox. According to the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, the monkeypox-infected mother and daughter are currently under medical care at the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Moreover, medical experts advise the public to seek medical attention and get medical treatment if they have rashes, blisters or other symptoms.
ඔවුන් දෙදෙනාටම විදේශීය රටක සම්බන්ධතාවයක් තියෙනවා කියලා අපි හොයාගෙන තියෙනවා. දේශ රටක සිට මේ ලංකාවට පැමිණියත් එක්ක තිබුණු පෞල් සම්බන්ධතාවය මත තමයි මම හිතන්නේ මේ රෝගය ඔවුන්ට වැළඳිලා තියෙන්නේ.
මේ monkeypox රෝගයේ රෝග ලක්ෂණ මොනවාද?
උණ සමේ මතුවන රෑෂ් එකක්, ඒ කියන්නේ බිබිලි, බොහෝ විට පැපොල රෝගය හා සමාන වන පළු බිබිලි වගේ ඒවා මතුවෙන්න පුළුවන්. වසාග්‍රන්ථි ඉදිමීම, උගුරේ අමාරුව, ඒ වගේ ලක්ෂණ මතුවෙනවා නම් වෛද්‍යවරයෙකු හමු වෙලා අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රතිකාර සඳහා යොමු වෙන එක වැදගත් වෙනවා.
ප්‍රධාන කාරණය තමයි අපි දන්නවා වඳුරු උණ නැත්නම් monkeypox කියන කාරණේ අපේ රටට ඇතුල් වෙනවා නම් ඇතුල් වෙන්නේ විදේශයකින්. ඒකට මෙහෙදි ප්‍රධානම කාරණය තමයි රෝගය නැත්නම් මේ වසංගතය රට තුළට ඇවිල්ලා යම් ආකාරයක පැතිරීමක් වෙලා ඒ හරහා රටේ සෞඛ්‍ය පද්ධතිය අනිත් පැත්තෙන් රටේ සංචාරක ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ මේ කාරණාවට බලපෑමක් වෙන්න කලින් එන්ට්‍රි පොයින්ට්ස් ටික නැත්නම් ඇතුල් වීමේ අවධානම තියෙන ස්ථානය. ඒ කියන්නේ වරාය සහ ගුවන්තොටුපොළ. මේ ස්ථානවල රෝග ලක්ෂණ සහිත පිරිස් ඒ වගේ මේ රට රෝගීන් වාර්තා වෙලා තියෙන අවදානම් කලාප වලින් රටවල් වලින් පැමිණෙන පිරිස් වල මූලික පරීක්ෂණ සිදු කිරීම සහ ආවේක්ෂණය කියන කාරණා සම්බන්ධයෙන් වැඩි අවධානයක් යොමු කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
We have more news coming up right after this short break. To stay with us on AdaDerana 24.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
අබාන්ස් මිඩ්ඩිය මෑඩ්නස් සේල් 50% දක්වා වට්ටම් සමග මාස 24ක් දක්වා පොලි රහිතව ජුනි 20 වනදා දක්වා පමණයි.
Welcome back. Member of Parliament Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam, who was arrested this morning, has been granted bail by the Kilinochchi Magistrate Court. The arrest was a result of a dispute that recently occurred with a group of police officers near an examination centre in the Vadamarachi area. The parliamentarian was taken into custody by a team of police officers attached to the Maruthankani police station from his residence in Colombo this morning.
The Jaffna District MP Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam, who represents the All Tamil Congress in the Parliament, has been accused of obstructing the duties of police officers and verbally abusing them during a recent event in Vadamarachi. The tense situation had taken place on the 2nd of June when the police officers asked MP Ponnambalam to call off his public meeting at the Thalayadi playground in consideration of the students sitting for the ordinary level examination at the nearby school. Following the incident, the MP was asked to make a statement on Monday to the police, however he failed to make an appearance. Yesterday, MP Ponnambalam received a written notice asking him to appear before the Maruthankani police on June 8. As the MP had refused to accept the notice, saying he can neither read nor speak Sinhalese, he was then taken into custody by a team of police officers attached to Maruthankani police at his residence in Colombo today after serving a translation of the respective written notice last night. The MP was granted bail by the Kilinochchi Magistrate Court this afternoon.
Giving you an update on the weather patterns taking over the country, the Met Department forecast heavy rainfall of above 75 millimetres to several districts in Sri Lanka. Several roads in the Kaluthara district were inundated following heavy rain, which caused inconveniences to many students facing the GCE O-level exams today. Meanwhile, the depression over the southeast Arabian Sea intensified into a cyclonic storm yesterday.
Speaking to AdaDerana First at 9, the Director of Hydrology and Disaster Management of the Irrigation Department, SPC Sugishwara, stated that the water levels of several rivers, including the Ging Ganga and Kuda Ganga, which had risen following the rainy weather, had slightly dropped. He further stated that main roads in several areas, including Bulat Sinhala and Palindanuara of Kaluthara district, have been flooded following the heavy rains, and this situation is likely to continue for the next 2 days. As a result, the students facing the GCE ordinary level exams were inconvenienced. The meteorological department forecasts showers and thunder showers to the western and Sabaragamuwa provinces and the Gaul and Matara districts. Fairly heavy showers over 75 millimeters are likely to fall in several areas in the Sabaragamuwa province and in the Gaul, Matara and Kaluthara districts. Showers or thunder showers are also forecast for several places in the Uva and central provinces and in the Ampara and Batiklo districts during the evening and at night. Strong winds of about 40 to 45 kilometers per hour can be expected at times in the northern and north central provinces and in the Hambantota Puttalam and Trincomalee districts. As such, the general public is requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by the temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. The National Building Research Organisation issued an early landslide warning to several areas in the Kalutara district.
Taking you to business news, the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable will meet on Friday to focus on technical talks aimed at discussing issues such as arrears and compatibility of the treatment for countries in default, such as Sri Lanka. According to Reuters, this would be the third encounter for the group that includes representatives of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the current group of 20 major economies leader, India, after one in Bangalore in February, followed by an April meeting in Washington during the IMF World Bank spring meetings. The initiative was formally launched late last year amid continued delays in securing debt treatment for countries in default, such as Zambia, Ghana and Sri Lanka, that are in talks with a wide variety of stakeholders like the Paris Club, India and China, the world's largest bilateral creditors. As part of the technical talks, the latest meeting will focus on cut-off dates, one of the sources said to Reuters, as consensus is needed on the starting date from which new loans are excluded from restructuring. Now, the Chief Executive Officer of Sri Lankan Airlines, Richard Natal, says the national carrier is expecting a profit of $50 million next year, adding that he also expects passenger traffic to surpass pre-COVID levels towards the end of this year owing to the economic boom in tourism. In an interview with Channel News Asia, Richard Natal mentioned that he expects a stronger outlook for next year with the country's economy returning to normalcy.
The outlook for next year is even stronger. If you look at the year we've just had, the year started with the economic challenges in the country in Sri Lanka. We had travel advisories, and then in July and August the country ran out of jet fuel. So I've never worked for an airline with no jet fuel in its home country before. Even with all of those headwinds, we still broke even. Assuming that the world stays the same for the year ahead, which we expect, and the Sri Lankan economy is rebounding, tourism is coming back, we're forecasting perhaps a $50 million profit next year.
You had a double whammy of COVID and a financial crisis in the country.
To return from COVID in December 21. December 21 was probably one of the most profitable months we'd ever had, and that continued through January, February and March. Traffic was coming back. There was a bit of a hiccup with Omicron in the January, but first quarter of last year, of the calendar year, it was profitable. And then we had the problems in the country, so it was like going through the whole thing again. But if you look where we are now, tourism is now back where it was the first quarter of last year is coming back. Day in, day out, we're promoting the country. I've worked for 8 airlines. I don't think I've ever worked for an airline that probably spends so much time promoting the country rather than the airline itself. Yeah, the country is looking at how to handle state-owned enterprises. Perhaps means privatizing. But if you look at us this year, 10% of our revenue has gone in paying interest on past debt that has really nothing to do with the airline of today. We've not had any money from the government for 2 years. But we've got interest rates on dollars that we're paying between 12 and 15%, and that is long-term unsustainable when passenger yields come down.
Well, the Colombo Bourse today closed in negative territory during the session, with the all-share price index ending at 8,722, down 24 points. The main index plunged due to extended profit-taking for a second consecutive day on banking sector and blue-chip counters. Analysts say Treasury shares increased investor involvement as they expected the T-bill rate to go down at the bill auction today. High net worth investors' activity was visible on Sampath Bank and Lion Brewery through off-board transactions, which pushed up the turnover compared to yesterday. Turnover was recorded at 554.4 million rupees, 21% lower than the monthly average of 700 million rupees. Turnover was backed by the banking sector, which contributed 22%, diversified financial sector 21%, and capital goods sector contributing 14%. Investor activity actively participated in foreign ownership heavy shares such as Lion Brewery, Sampath Bank and Chevron Lubricants, adding a positive sentiment to the market during today's session. And oil prices edged higher today in the global market as Saudi Arabia's surprise weekend pledge to deepen output cuts outweighed weak Chinese export data and rising US fuel stocks. The global oil market is on the cusp of a massive shortfall, with the additional Saudi cuts expected to deepen the market deficit to more than 6 million barrels a day in July by some estimates.
Brent crude futures were up 36 cents at $76.65 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 37 cents to $72.11. Both benchmarks jumped more than $1 on Monday after Saudi Arabia's decision over the weekend to reduce output by 1 million barrels per day to 9 million in July. Prices fell earlier in the session on weak Chinese economic data and rising US fuel inventories. China's exports shrank much faster than expected in May, and imports fell at a slower pace as manufacturers struggled to find demand abroad and domestic consumption remained sluggish. Today's data also showed that crude oil imports into China, the world's largest oil importer, rose to their third highest monthly level in May as refiners built up inventories. US gasoline inventories, meanwhile, rose by about 2.4 million barrels, and distillates inventories were up by about 4.5 million barrels in the week ended June 2nd. The unexpected build in fuel inventories raised concerns over consumption by the world's top oil user, especially as travel demand grew during the Memorial Day weekend. The US Energy Information Administration said US crude oil production this year would rise faster and demand increases would be slower than previously expected.
And let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during today. That's it from us tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Indiveri Amwatha. Good night.